Let's go to the Washington Examiner commentary editor Tim Carney, FoxNews.com columnist Liz Peek, market watcher Jim Lacamp. Thank you all for coming. Not that the markets have moved one way or the other on this, Liz. I think maybe, as I indicated at the top, drop jaw confusion here, but I don't know if I kind of relish the president, our president, being in the position of nodding his head in agreement, and forcefully so. Yeah, that's what Vlad says. That's what is. What do you think?
Well, I think this was a moment where the president was really caught out. I mean, I think he should have practiced this response. His aide should have told him he was going to get this question. Because this is
I think this was his planned response, Liz. I really do.
I think, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me clearly it's going to engender a huge amount of rolling of eyes and further confirmation on the left that he was working with Putin all along, et cetera. But look, I think there are legitimate places where we need to work with the Russians, and we have a lot of common interests. Certainly anti-terrorism is one of them. Also, standing up to China is something where Russia is sort of a natural ally. And obviously there's Syria. So what does President Trump really want? He wants to get out of Syria. He wants to get Syria resolved in a humanitarian way. We've seen that be a really serious interest of his. Vladimir Putin could well be the key to that. Is he really going to turn around on global TV and say to Putin, you're lying? I really think we've got all the evidence. You're lying about this. I never expected him to do that, and I'm really kind of surprised everybody did think so.
Well, I wouldn't even say you're lying or something like that, to be a little bit more forceful, just a little bit, not accept everything at face value. Tim Carney, your thoughts?
I think that Donald Trump embarrassed himself and the country today. He was supposed to be the strong guy when I would be out in Iowa. Well, we need a strong leader, none of these Washington wusses. And he went out there and he wouldn't talk tough to Vladimir Putin when we have, you know, it's not just the FBI, but Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence, saying, yes, Russia meddled in this election. There are ways to be diplomatic and forceful at the same time. Almost any other president of the United States would have been able to handle that and say, this is not acceptable. If Russia does this again, we will crack down, and we expect you, Putin, to police your people. There are ways to do it. He didn't do that. He instead spun into his own little stuff where he tried to make sure that everybody knew he really won the election. He did not show himself to be a strong man today next to Vladimir Putin.
Well, just a couple of examples where he says he finds Putin to be extremely strong and powerful. In his denial, there must be something there. In other words, that if Putin was so strong in his denial, then it must be the case. The offer to allow U.S. investigators access to Russian suspects in the Mueller probe, and I guess in reverse, vice versa, that was a very novel, special, ingenious way to respond to some of the charges in this country. I don't know, Jim. I take nothing away from what this president has done economically with the tax cuts, regulations, but this is humiliatingly embarrassing and just a joke. Just my own view.
Well,
and
it's certainly not what Ronald Reagan would have done. Ronald Reagan said, let's make our enemies fear us more and keep our friends closer to us. So what we saw last week is we saw the president go into NATO and bark a lot at our NATO allies. Now, and maybe they deserve it. Maybe they do need to pay more. But what we're seeing here is it seems to be almost capricious and arbitrary between who's with us and who's against us. And the president seems to not mind at all a whole lot of people being against us. And the trade wars notwithstanding, and the trade wars are accelerating. I'm a little surprised that the market's not responding to it more than they are. But at some point, you have to wonder what the grand plan is.
Well, you have to give them a little bit of time. They fainted about 10 minutes ago, so a lot of them are just waking up. But I mean, I'm being facetious, but to make a bigger point here, and maybe Liz, you can help me with this. I don't think you get a second chance to make a good first impression at a stage and venue like this. Now, I know that you have met before, and a number of times this is a different beast here, and I just found that Vladimir Putin appeared to run circles around the president and get him to buy, that is, the guy standing next to him, Donald Trump, hook, line, and sinker, every single snaky lie and misstatement he has ever made on this matter. When we have him so cornered and known, I mean, practically photographs. I mean, and it's still denied. Come on.
I guess I've been more influenced, Neil, by his actions since becoming president than by his words, because his words are all over the place. He is not a wordsmith.
Oh, wait a minute. So you think he's acting, that is the president,
well,
President Trump, a lot tougher behind the scenes than he is? Really?
Well, let's face it. I mean, he's the one who put the missile defense system back in play in Poland after Obama took it out. Okay, he sent military-grade weapons into the Ukraine when Obama refused to do that. He sent the missiles in to strike Syria when there was evidence of a chemical weapons attack, which obviously was a great affront to the Russians at that time. And look, let's face it, let's go back to NATO. What's he really haranguing Angela Merkel for? It's for relying on Russian natural gas. Why is he doing that? Because Russia's not reliable, and he knows they have used energy.
Well, he must be reliable. Liz, I love you to death, and you're a genius. But so I'm not slapping you here. But Tim, that whole German thing with the Russians is, to me, the height of irony, because he's going after the Germans for making a deal with Russia. He's complaining to NATO members for not paying up enough, when in fact, the bill that they're incurring is because of all the, the venturing about that has been defined by Vladimir Putin's leadership. They wouldn't incur this large bill if it weren't for his snaky actions. So it just seems to be like off the charts, weird and hypocritical.
Well, I think there's a distinction.
While our own European allies, we're spending more time fighting them than the guy who's poisoning, killing people, and doing all this other nasty stuff, and he gets a pass and they don't.
Well, I think the distinction from Liz's comments that comes out is this is not a pro-Putin administration that we have in the U.S. And I don't even think Trump is a pro-Russia guy. I think Donald Trump has an undue fondness for Vladimir Putin that's rooted in the fact that Trump really wants to see himself as a strong man, and he sees the strength in Putin. Strength both in ways that, maybe some people in Russia like, but certainly are not democratic liberal values. Strength that is connected to Putin's assassinating political rivals. And so we have an administration that has been strong.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
we have an administration that's been strong, but a president who likes Putin.
He couldn't be trusted. George W. Bush said, I looked in his eyes and I trust the man. And the next thing you know, we got snookered. Obama said the same thing. And so what we've been shown time and time again is that Putin can't be trusted in any way. And so when Trump goes over there and appears to kowtow a little bit to Putin, it certainly doesn't look like the strong, bully-type president that we wanted to have, at least against our enemies.
Well, I'm going to go with what Liz Peek is thinking, because I have great respect for her, and I hope she's right about this, that in actuality, there's a method to what appears to be this madness, where on a global stage with the leader of Russia, the president just seemed to passively acknowledge and nod in agreement with everything that Vladimir Putin said. And Vladimir Putin is not a nice guy. We have a closer relationship with him than we do the Prime Minister of Canada, just north of us. And at least the advantage with Canada is their maple syrup is delicious.